All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the May 2024 meeting of the Orange Town Plan and Zoning Commission. I am Commissioner Ozzie Parenti.
Tom Tarenti.
Kevin Cornell.
Jenny Bowser.
Jack Demerjen, zoning administrator.
Okay, Jenny's our new assistant zoning.
That's right, new
Administrator.
administrative assistant in the zoning office.
She'll be
so-
taking minutes for us.
That's right, she'll,
Okay.
she'll be with us at our meetings from now on.
All right, very good, very good. Welcome. Hope we're not too difficult to deal with.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right. All right, first item on our agenda is a review of the minutes from the April 16, 2024 meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review those?
I've got a few comments, Oz.
Yep.
Jenny, on page 2, second paragraph, second line, that should be N, like Nancy, NFPA, not MFPA. And at the end of that line, I think as wants to be A.
Got it.
Then under opposition, second paragraph on that same page, fourth line, where it reads remaining, staying after hours, I think staying wants to go.
Okay, remaining after hours.
Yep.
Got it.
And then on the last line of that same paragraph, battery plus should be batteries and bulbs.
Batteries and bulbs. No plus.
Pardon me?
No plus, just batteries and bulbs.
Correct.
Okay.
And then same comment under rebuttal, first paragraph, end of the second line, should be batteries and bulbs again.
Got it.
And then on page 3, the paragraph that reads, there was a brief discussion,
Yes.
third one down, I guess.
Yes.
Third line, towards the end of it, I think you want to, it wants to read weighed heavily in their
Heavily.
decision.
Heavily. Okay.
And that's it for me.
I just had one tiny little correction on page 2. Third full paragraph, first line, Chairman Parenti read into the records. I would just make that singular.
Record.
Yeah,
Okay.
other than that. I had nothing other than that. Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the April 16th, 2024 meeting minutes as amended.
You know what? Well, one thing I forgot to mention is, obviously, Commissioners Kaplan and Smith will not be with us tonight. They had other engagements. So I don't know that we have enough people, and Kevin wasn't here for the last meeting, so he can't vote
Right.
on the minutes, so I don't know that we could approve them tonight. I cannot second a motion.
Right, it's because, because the chairman can't initiate or second the motion. We can hold this off until the next meeting.
Let's do that.
Yeah,
We'll,
we go from
when
there.
we have Judy and/or Paul at the next meeting, we'll approve the minutes, but those are the corrections anyway. We step in the right direction. All right, next item on the agenda is old business. And the item after that is new business. Does anyone have anything under those topics that they'd like to bring up at this point? The repair shop, the automobile, towing and repair on 34, that's, I think you said that was scheduled for the zoning board of appeals in June?
Correct, yes.
That's still on?
So the date was changed of that hearing due to availability. So the hearing for the cease and desist appeal will be on July 1st at the regularly scheduled ZBA meeting for July.
Okay.
And then during my report, I was going to go into a little bit, I'm sure people have seen a little activity up there. They are replacing the underground tanks for the gas station. So that's what's been going on over there. And like I said, we will be hearing that appeal at the July 1st meeting.
Okay.
So like-for-like exchange on the pumps and island.
Correct. Nothing is changing about the canopy or the pumps. The pumps are, I shouldn't say that, the pumps are going to be upgraded, not by number, just new equipment, I should say.
Yeah,
Yeah,
But-
but not a more intensive.
Correct. No more pumps, no change in canopy, nothing like that.
All right. Anything else under either of those topics? Okay, then, let's have our report. Did you have anything
Yeah,
else,
no, that
Jack?
was it. You know, we've been getting a lot of residential applications, you know, like we always do in the summer. Other than that, we do have a couple in-law applications that are gonna be coming through. So at our next meeting, we do have one scheduled, so we'll
Okay.
be hearing an application for that. Other than that, I don't have anything.
Get any report on the status of leasing at Firelight?
They're leasing. I think the last I spoke with someone from Cherry Hill, they had about 15 units leased, and that was a few weeks ago. So they're renting, absolutely.
I took a drive through there one day, and I thought nice. I thought very nice.
It
The building
is.
came out nice.
Absolutely.
There were, what, 72 units?
72 in total. 1, 2, and some 3 bedrooms.
That's good. I hope they do well there. And Gary Riccitelli's building, proceeding.
Absolutely, proceeding full speed.
Okay.
In fact, they just applied for their signage this week.
Based on our approval from.
Actually,
yeah.
they haven't applied for the pylon sign yet,
Oh,
but
okay.
the building signs they have, yes.
All right.
and the self-storage is under construction.
Yeah.
Yep.
I noticed that for the first time this morning, as
It's
a matter
tucked
of
in
fact.
on Salemi Lane, yep.
Yeah, but it's getting up there. You
Oh,
can
yeah,
see it,
absolutely,
so,
yep.
yeah. All right. Anything else? Jack? Okay. All right, then, the only other thing on our agenda for this evening is we're going to review get presentations from three proposals for work on our plan of conservation and development. It's due in 2025. And we have three bidders, three responses to our request for proposals. They're all here tonight, and we're gonna just spend a little time with each one of them so they can go over their, do their presentation, go over their proposals, okay? Did you have some order that you wanted to?
The only, I was gonna go in the order that they were submitted, if
All right.
anyone has any.
Yeah, we're gonna have, one group in the room at a time.
Correct, yeah, I've asked the other, the other companies that are not presenting to wait outside so we can kind of go through it as a group,
Okay.
ask any questions that we have, and go from there. I've asked them to try to keep it a little, under a half hour.
That'd be
and,
great.
Yeah, we'll go from there.
All right. I mean, they're all very comprehensive written proposals, so. Okay,
All right, good to go?
you're gonna
I will go get them.
grab them,
First is gonna be H and H.
H and H. Yeah, I wasn't sure whether it had been sent already. But that's a good checklist, right?
Just need some assistance setting up,
Sure.
plugging in my laptop.
Okay.
Do you mind us to stand at the podium?
Yeah, you know what, it's because of the way the microphones are set up and
Yes.
we're on TV.
Oh, that's right, for the recording for the other,
Not on, it's not on ESPN or anything.
We wore a good clothes. Can they?
Try not to act like you're in Congress.
Yeah, we'll try to tone it down a little bit.
All right. Yeah, I gotta get out of the way, right?
It might blind you.
It's a very bright light.
All right.
Tends to shine right in the chairman's eye.
Okay. All right.
All set?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
All right, if you could just introduce yourselves, so we can get that for our minutes.
Do you want me to pass this out?
There's just two copies I brought.
Okay. Just set these here for you. These are the copy of the West Haven plan that you had requested us to bring.
Right.
Okay, so these mics are active, right? They're live, okay.
I hear you loud and clear now.
Okay, excellent, excellent.
So I'm gonna take this so we can hear ourselves as well.
Well, thank you so much for inviting us here to Orange and to talk to you all about what we have and what we want to show you that we can do with your plan of conservation and development. My name is Neil Desai. I'm principal planner at Hardesty in Hanover, and
I'm Sarah Brown. I'm also principal planner at Hardesty in Hanover.
since Sarah has a couple more years than me at the firm, I'll have her give a brief lowdown on our group.
So Neil and I are part of the community planning group at Hardesty in Hanover. We're a small group of 6 people, part of a larger engineering firm who does all sorts of structural and civil engineering. One of the nice things that we have about our community planning group is that we're small, but we all bring unique strengths to doing POCDs. Victor Minerva, who is our thank you, Neil. Who is our director, has a lot of experience with implementation and grant writing. Neil, of course, our project manager, just wrapped up the comprehensive plan in the village of Mamaroneck, but was also New York, sorry, and was also the author and main project manager of the West Haven, Connecticut plan as well in 2017. As for me, so Neil is our extraordinaire of POCD and comprehensive plans. My expertise is more in the realm of zoning. I sit with several planning boards, planning commissions as their in-house planner, so I'm very familiar with public outreach, public hearings, including the public in the process, and what the village or what town needs are. Another strength that we have, IACO is an architectural and urban design. So when we get to design and form of maybe thinking of zoning changes, she can actually visualize some of those things for us. And then Greg Del Rio is our traffic and mobility person. He's an engineer, and he can also help out with zoning changes. Can Route 1 actually support different types of new development? So,
Thanks, Sarah. And I've handed out 2 copies. It's a very thick document, so I was only able to print out 2 freshly of the West Haven POCD for you to look at. But you can also use the QR code if you wish. But that's, these days that's where we're going with documents online. So I think it's really important that the final documents really are legible online, so the average person can just put it up on their tablet, their cell phone, and be able to read it rather than patch together 30 different files and try to read a POCD. So I think that's very important. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about West Haven as I get onto the next slides. I'll throw in some examples on what we think, what we did in West Haven, which I think is some really noteworthy things. One other thing I'll say is that I've come to believe that a plan is only good as its implementation. I think this was a great plan. I had a lot of fun with it, and it was implemented as best as it could be until the planner retired, COVID hit, and they didn't hire a new city planner. So that's just kind of giving this full story now of the West Haven POCD. So they actually implemented a lot of different efforts, and I'll talk about implementation because I think that's a very critical part of POCDs that a lot of firms don't bring to the table. But before I get into that, I want to start at the most fundamental level of community engagement. We, as consultants, don't know much about a community. We can certainly glean a number of things driving around, but until we start talking to people, we're not going to know much. And so I think in terms of reaching out to the people of Orange, our approach is this is a campaign. This is really a campaign to bring attention to a really important document that's going to guide investments decisions over the next 10 years in the town. And so we want to give that project an excellent name that that resonates with people. The Plan of Conservation Development doesn't roll off the tongue easily, but that's what it is. We can work with that. But, coming up with a name that really might resonate with people and make them want to say, hey, maybe I'll pick this up. This sounds interesting. This sounds like it's relevant to my life in this town, excuse me. In terms of getting the word out, we want to start with existing channels, of course. We see that there's some coming soon from Orange in terms of Facebook, Instagram, and I think if it's coming soon, I think the POCD could be a really excellent vehicle for testing out and getting people's attention to social media if the town is heading in that direction or whenever it's going to be deployed. So we'd certainly want to use those channels. There are also other Facebook groups that we can use in terms of promotions and getting the word out to the community. Now, we also want to get the word out kind of visually, tactilely. We want to give people materials that they can look at. So this is an example of a comprehensive plan. This is a postcard this is a front and back of a postcard that we distributed throughout town. We actually had volunteers in the community help us out because we're consultants. We have certain time and number of hands, but we got a group of volunteers to help hand these out to businesses, to people's front doors. And you don't have to read that, but it's really talking a little bit about what in this case what a POCD would be, and how is it relevant to my life in town, and so why should I be interested in this document, and why should I give you my comments, and why should I participate any more further than this? So we want to reach out in many different ways to people. Obviously, desktop. Some people are going to be inclined to sit at the desk, look at things, comment, send emails. They're good at that. If there's a mapping tool that we propose using, if some people are really inclined at, we can curate that to however makes sense for the POCD here. But this is a great way for people to interact and point out just specific special places or problem areas or ideas of things that could happen into the future. Of course, we'll have in-person workshops as well. We'll have an online survey certainly should be part of the mix as well as part of the engagement online. That's a very important thing to do. And then the bottom two pictures show InReach, and I want to kind of spend a little attention to these. This is in West Haven. We want to reach people where they don't expect us. So in West Haven, we set up a booth at the Savin Rock Festival. We had people come and write down in their little message boards what their big idea is. And what this did for us is it underscored, at least in West Haven, that economic development was the top issue of people's minds. This woman just happens to say Economic Development Commission, more meetings, participation. But also another way to reach out to people is through focus groups. A lot of times, the younger community, the younger members of the community, high school students and so on, might be harder to grasp or don't typically have a voice in community civic affairs. So this is an example of how we would reach out to them through focus groups to really hear and listen to what they have to say about the future of their community that they live in and will be living in.
Yeah, if I could just add to that a little bit, Neil. One thing that we noticed, especially with the boards and commissions that I work with, when the pandemic hit, all of a sudden we were used to in-person meetings and we went to Zoom, and we didn't know how the transition was going to be. We found that we actually had more people participating, maybe because everybody was stuck at home and they were looking for something to do, but it's a lot easier for some people to communicate their feelings if it's through a screen instead of at an in-person workshop. So we've kind of taken that information that we found and we've realized that we need to, and I mean, you're televising your meeting right now. There's a lot of people with young kids. There's a lot of people that commute a long way, and to have to go out to a meeting at night is just not feasible. So the InReach thing is great because on a Saturday afternoon, people are just out with their kids at a festival. Maybe they're at a Little League game, maybe there's something, and we could set up a pop-up tent. And then all of a sudden, you're hearing from people who can't come out to a meeting. I think there were very few things that were good that came out of the pandemic, but that was one of them, that people got more involved in doing things and realizing that boards and commissions actually have these meetings and they're doing them online, and there's other ways to be reached than to just going to town hall to hear. But maybe I just
No.
talked over what you were going to
that's
say
good.
on your next slide.
No, that's a really good point. It doesn't mean that we are going to have in-person workshops as well. And that's going to be part of the package of this whole community engagement. And just to kind of continue on, like this is a lot of work, this community engagement piece. And so as we're talking about it, the other thing we want to do is work with community partners to promote, inform, and engage people. So the example of that is if there's a newsletter that the schools send out, make sure there's a message in the newsletter about the POCD process. Religious institutions in town, similar type of thing. If they have an e-newsletter that goes out to the constituencies, get in touch and have them ask if they can put something in their e-news. So we're looking at broad-based public participation, getting people involved who are already involved and people who aren't maybe typically involved, and really trying to bring those two together. Of course, we want to meet with the town committees, the commissions, and the authorities. They're really on the pulse of the various topics in town. And again, I mentioned the focus groups with various constituencies, and we can determine what makes most sense for Orange in terms of the specific focus groups that we do hold. So a little bit looking at the schedule. So this schedule shows, if you look at number 2, engage and envision, I just wanted to give you a sense of how this stuff would lay out over the course of, about a year work. And, you would start with launching a website. You'd start with an online survey. The Orange Country Fair, is that what it's called, is in September. That could be the event that we could have a booth at and really reach out to people there. We could have an in-person workshop the following month. During the kind of the November, Thanksgiving, Christmas season, maybe that's the best time to have some, or maybe not, with focus groups and having meetings with commissions and gathering all that intelligence. Then we need time to really, put all those things together and start working on the plan. And you can imagine, an open house in May, and and a plan completion, would be with the public hearing in September. And so this is kind of how I just wanted to give you a sense of how all the things I talked about would fit into a schedule like this. And I can come back to the slide if you have more questions on that. So our approach to comprehensive plans, to POCDs, I think what I really want to get at is that there's still not a lot of firms that are doing the types of things that we're doing here and that I'm going to talk about here. And so when we talk about the first thing, which is number 1, you don't get a sense in a lot of POCDs, what are the top priorities in this community? You get a sense of everything. You get a sense of what's big in land use, what's big in transportation, what are the topics here, but you don't get a sense of what are the top 3 priorities in this town that need addressing according to community members. And so we really put our attention on identifying community priorities. This is just an example of a survey in a community where a hurricane hit, and it's a coastal community, and flood protection quickly became the number 1 community priority. And therefore, this happened during the course of the comprehensive plan, so we had to pivot and really look at having a strong resiliency section in the comprehensive plan as best as we could, in fact, given that it's a comprehensive plan, a POCD. But at the same time, you had given us on the first page of the RFP a number of topics: affordable housing, open space assessment, traffic, stormwater treatment. We want to see how these align with the community priorities and take it from there. So priorities is a really important thing, because also with priorities, when you come up with an implementation guidance, you have a sense of what are going to be the first top 3 things, or the top 4 things you're going to start to tackle. Another thing that you don't see a lot happening in POCDs is flexibility in the structure. You still see a lot of plans, which is not necessarily a bad thing. If it makes sense, you know, you can have a POCD structured with land use, transportation, conservation, but sometimes it's hard to separate things when you're talking about a specific place. So in West Haven, we kind of have the structure of the West Haven POCD has two types of sections. One of them is called plans for places. We all felt ultimately that all these places within West Haven needed special attention. And so we looked within Allentown, within Route 1 Post Road, downtown, what are the different, you know, land use, transportation, circulation, you know, what are the different strategies that each of these areas could benefit from. And then, of course, there's requirements that the state has, and so you'll see the topical plan elements: community facilities, natural and coastal resources, historic resources, land use plan. So those are the part of the required elements of the POCD by the state, and so we wanted to address that as well. So if it makes sense, and in West Haven, it really made sense to dig deep into these different specific areas of town. And that may or may not make sense in Orange, but I just want to show that we can be flexible with the structure. We don't necessarily need to. We can be flexible for the structure if it's going to help, if it's going to be a better outcome for the town, a better product. And so that's one point I wanted to make across. Another thing that you often don't see in a POCD is you see a sentence that's a recommendation. You know, consider rezoning the, you know, Route 1 corridor or something. I'm just making that up. It's a very kind of boilerplate. But what else is there behind that recommendation? So we provide substantive guidance with each recommendation. So each of those pink areas is a recommendation, and we go in there, we provide specific guidance for our recommendations to help explain it. You know, what does it mean? You know, what does it mean when we say, plan for redevelopment? And then another thing I want to add is that we are also able to illustrate concepts where form and design are really critical. And so we felt that, along with the planner in West Haven at the time, that we really wanted to showcase, these are just showing some block diagrams of how development should be oriented in the waterfront in West Haven, in order to have the most, you know, positive impact and the best scale that relates to everything else around it. And so that's another thing that we can bring through our architecture experience, and is kind of modeling out some of these scenarios. And I think the last thing, which is the implementation. We provide phased implementation guidance, and it's a separate Word document so it's not trapped in the PDF file. It's a separate Word document. We identify the short-term actions, midterm, long-term actions. We provide some cost information where there's sometimes some things may only be $sign because it's just, you know, it's not a big capital item, but something may be a big capital item. We'd have, you know, we'd include more costs associated with it. We'd identify potential funding sources, including the grants that you might want to apply for to help with that. And as I said, it lives as a separate document. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Sarah?
No, I would just say that this implementation approach is something I think that's very important. In some of the communities that I'm working in right now, we're actually looking at if they want to update their comprehensive plan, and they don't know if they want to because no one ever took the time to put an implementation plan in. So their plan that they did in 2000, this is in New York, so they're not required to do it every 10 years. Their plan that they did in 2009, we actually, the board couldn't come to a conclusion if they really needed to update it because nobody knew if they had accomplished anything that they did. So we looked at it and we said, oh, well, we talked about, we hadn't prepared the plan, but, you know, you talked about rezoning this property. Well, that had gotten done, but that was the only thing out of the entire implementation that had ever gotten done because it was locked in the document. It got put on the shelf. Everyone was like, wonderful, we've finished our comprehensive plan, we've checked that box, we have it, but they weren't actually really using it. And this is something that, you know, as a day-to-day planner in communities, this is what we need. And I like that there's short, mid, and long. What's a few pieces of low-hanging fruit that we might be able to really accomplish right now? And then what are some longer-term goals to put in the capital plan? So I think this is a great concept, Neil, and I just,
Well, thanks.
yeah. No, as a person who uses POCDs and comprehensive plans a lot on a daily basis, I love that this is actually a living document. You know, we always talk about making it a living document, but this really does
And
it.
that's not filled out completely, as you know, so this is
Yeah.
just, I needed a graphic.
Yeah. So,
But, thank you. Thank you, that's,
thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah, but I also think that you answered it, but I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So, like most community volunteer boards, when we all fall within a narrow band of the demographic of the entire town.
Yes.
So while we're all, in our minds, working on what we think is best for the town, the engagement of other segments who don't, like you said, the young people, whatever, I think is going to be important, because we may all have opinions on more housing density for market rate apartments.
Yeah.
And a significant part of the town may have a completely different opinion, but we would never necessarily know.
Yeah.
So, when you're engaging people, rather than asking, do you ever ask any leading questions? Because we have some requirements statutorily to discover certain things, and getting some input from everybody might be helpful, rather than asking them if they think we need a new soccer field.
Yes.
Or them saying, well, my kid's 11, I need a new soccer field.
Right, because people who have children that are using park facilities are probably going to have a different a different outlook on it than a person who is maybe looking to retire and maybe moving into a smaller house and, you know, aging in place. So everybody has they're at a different point in their life. They have different priorities. And I think that is one of the best things that come out of community engagement. And that's why we found doing many different types of things, because you hear things, you can put priorities in there, but you're going to hear things that might not even be on your radar. But there could also be, because you do have, I think you said you have your finger on the pulse of what's going on in the town from an administration point of view, things that are needed and how things get funded. So there could also be, what would you think about if we had affordable housing in a certain area, or if we had a new soccer field somewhere? It's really, and I think that's where it comes down to working with the boards and the people who are in town hall all the time and know some of the things that the town needs, but then also hearing from the public. Does that answer your question? Or did?
Yes, you have a robust way of trying to gather information from different segments of the community by going to different locations and in different methodologies to extract the information.
Yeah, and Neil can probably speak to this better, Mamaroneck, when you worked with the church group to reach.
well, I was going to say first, just the survey is a good instrument, and we put a lot of work into making sure we get a good response on that. But because we do ask demographic type questions on there, so we can compare. So that could be either maybe the location they live in. You know, we try to ask this as an optional question, but age. And when you say it's optional, people are more likely to answer it when you don't make it up. So we say it's optional, but that's a really, really helpful, because when we're cross-tabulating the survey results, we want to see, like, are different demographics, in terms, let's just say age now, are answering this question differently. And that's one thing that really helps, that comes out of the survey, is you get to slice the data into different ways and compare. And that's a rich way to look at the thing. And so when we actually do the survey results, we'll look at, we'll do a detailed analysis of these results to slice and dice it, to see more than just like, what did the whole population think, but what did different segments of the population think, and bring that to you.
I mean, in terms of number of people, we're a relatively small community, so I don't really feel like we have the same sort of defined neighborhoods or areas that a city like West Haven might have with the Allentown district and.
Yeah, or like Milford, where
Right.
several different parts of town.
Right, but but, I mean, the procedure's all the same. And
Right.
the end work product is going to comply with the state statute requirements
Yeah.
in
just-
excess of.
Right, in excess of, and showing, we used a lot of the different types of community engagement and also approaches in West Haven, and it's obviously was an approved document, exceeded the state standard, so that's obviously critical. We need to get the state's.
I imagine that's your starting point. It's sort of
Yeah.
using the statute as a checklist.
Yeah, and that's why I included it in the proposal, and because
Right.
it's so dense when you look at the actual legislation. And I think the 2015 POCD has a nice short summary of it as well, because then it's really important to say the shall and the may. Those are two important words to look at, because obviously shall means you have to do it, and the may is if it makes sense, let's do it, that sort of thing. So.
Okay. Any other questions, Tom?
Just one quick question. I'm very familiar with you as an engineering outfit. I'm just curious to know how long you've been doing POCD work.
Well, to me, POCD is a comprehensive plan. I've done one POCD, which is West Haven's. I've done 4 comprehensive plans, not Connecticut. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I started doing them I've been doing this for 24 years. So for 24 years, comprehensive planning, and zoning work.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank
you
you.
very much for your proposal and for coming here tonight to
Absolutely.
present
Is
it.
there any reason we have to keep them till everything's done? I mean.
Oh, no, I don't
Yeah,
think
I
so.
didn't- wanted to make sure you guys were ready to set them free, so.
Yeah, we don't want to leave, and then you say, hey,
Yeah.
talk to Neil and Sarah again.
Yeah.
That was very enlightening, by the way.
Yeah,
Pardon?
That was very enlightening.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'm glad we
Yeah.
got a chance to speak with you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I always enjoy the
Yeah.
interview process and you have a beautiful town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Unfortunately, you missed the nicest people on the board.
Yeah. H&H.
All right, thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Yes, have a good night.
Who's next?
I don't know if they have
All right, well, I'll,
a presentation, so we'll wait for them to confirm. Okay. All right, BFJ is gonna be our next.
Thank you, Ed.
No problem.
all right, thank you.
Enjoy the nice evening.
Yeah, it's
Lovely outside.
You're on, yeah.
Are we?
Yeah, we're ready. Yep.
I do.
Yeah.
At least it was nice. Because I only remember ones that shouldn't be. It was kind of interesting. Well, some of these are subsets of very large companies. Colliers is one.
Right.
So is their price. So is their price. I get the impression they do the most colleges.
think so? I think so.
That would probably be best as opposed to being super formal on everything.
Good evening.
Good evening, how are you? Where would you like us to sit?
You know, it would be best if you could come to the podium.
Sure.
Because, you know, the audio stuff and,
Okay.
Yeah, make it easy on Chris.
yeah.
Do you want us to, we thought we'd do more informal and just do the presentation as opposed to doing the whole through the projector and everything else?
Whatever.
Whatever's easiest for you guys.
I mean, you know, we have your proposal and we've had a chance to review it. If, you know, whatever you think best as far as expanding on that
What I
or
would do,
hit the
I'm gonna
highlights.
give everybody a copy of the presentation.
Sure.
All right.
Because if I'm gonna have to stand at a podium, and then that way you don't have to turn around and crane your neck at a screen.
Thank you.
Are these mics on?
Push the button. If you see a green button.
Would you guys rather them up at the podium?
It doesn't matter. I mean, if that works,
Why don't we just,
Yeah, just
Yeah,
make sure that
that'd be
your,
fine.
make
That
sure
would-
the green light is on.
yeah, let's do that.
that would be fine.
That way we, it's like I
Is it, okay,
said. Perfect.
all right. If you just want to start by introducing yourselves, that'd be great.
Just gotta push the, yep, there.
All right, we're on, there we go, perfect. All right, so first off, thank you very much for inviting us for the interview. We're actually very thrilled to be here. I'm on.
Oh, yeah, okay.
You're welcome and thank you for the proposal.
I think you might have to press, yeah.
Oh, there we go. All right, there we go again.
No. Yeah,
Yeah.
that,
So my name is Thomas Madden. I am Associate Principal with BFJ Planning. And with me tonight is Suzanne Goldberg, who's going to be our project manager. I am working right now, I will be the point of contact, and then Frank Fish, who is the principal in charge of this project. He couldn't come tonight because he's actually in Glen Cove making a presentation to the town board. So just the two of us tonight that are going to walk through everything here. So what we want to do is just sort of quickly go through an agenda. We're going to give some introductions, a little bit of team overview, project scope, project approach, and just leave it open for questions and answers right at the very end. The interview team, like as I said, is myself and Suzanne, but we have Frank Fish, who is the principal in charge, Evan Accardi, who has had a lot of experience with the sustainability and outreach. George Jockmart is famous throughout the region for transportation mobility, who will help us with the transportation portion of the plan. Jonathan Martin, that's Dr. Martin, he actually teaches at several schools in New York. He's helping us with our urban design and any design features that we will have to look at. Say we're along Route 1 or some of the neighborhoods or parks, we'll have that up in availability. And then as also a part of BFJ, we have Urbanomics, which will help out with the social, economic, and market analysis. I will do a part of it as well because part of my background is I am the former Economic Development Director for the City of Stamford. And I've been in government for 23 years and now I'm out for the last 2. So as some say, that was a life sentence I've already served in municipal government. So that is our team. We have it supplemented, and what most people don't know is BFJ, we're actually part of Perkins Eastman Architecture. And so we have a very deep field of additional resources that we can lay into as well. So any types of engineering, architecture, things like that are not part of the initial team, but as we start to move along, we may be able to draw other people in with those specialties. So for example, right now I'm working in New Haven from Union Station to downtown, working on their plan. And we have Eric Fang, who is part of PE Strategies, working with me to do a lot of the architectural work on that. So just the organization, of course, we'll have the Town of Orange, BFJ, as I went through, and then Urbanomics really as our sub. And then if we do need additional subs, we would bring them in and introduce them to everybody. But this is really our project team right now from what we've seen with the scope itself. So BFJ Planning, we've been around since 1980. We have extensive experience in the tri-state area. We do a lot of plans in Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Long Island. We specialize in planning, urban design, environmental analysis, real estate consulting, transportation planning, sustainability, resiliency, and downtown revitalization. BFJ, we're known within New York State. We do a lot of the New York Forward Plans and the Downtown Revitalization Initiative grants. Typically, these are about $500,000 to $700,000 grants that lead up to allowing municipalities to apply for $10 to $20 million worth of projects. And so, again, we have a lot of experience working with the communities on these, and then as well helping them secure those grants, that grant money. Part of our experience, we work from big places to little places. City of Stamford, we did their last comprehensive plan. They're doing another one right now. We just finished the City of White Plains comprehensive plan. But we also work on some of the smaller places. So like Southampton, that we just did their village comprehensive plan. We are just finishing up Town of Newtown's POCD. So I'm working with Rob over there, just finishing up that plan. We just did the City of Merredin's POCD in 2020. And then we just finished up as well as part of some POCD work was the Wilton Center Master Plan and Form-Based Code. And so we redid all of the Wilton Center area, came up with new code, new designs. That was about a 1.5-year process to get through that. But we have a lot of experience both in zoning and in form-based codes. So as you start to look at your land use development later on, we can help sort of write a lot of that stuff with you. Our guiding principles, of course, is planning, sustainability, economic development, and community development. We're very much about transparency. And me being in government for so long, I like to have the sunshine come in. I don't like planning in the dark. I don't think planning should be done in the back rooms. I think planning should be right out in front. So the residents really understand what's happening, and there's really no surprises, so that you can sort of work through all the different issues and sort of come to some types of consensus. Will you get consensus on everything? No, but at least you can address some of these issues. So in the end, all that results driven and everything that we do is into implementation. And that's the last thing we want, is to have a plan sit on the shelf. We really like, when we work in the municipalities, we think of this as a long-term partnership, and we're here to help you out, move these plans into that implementation and to help you move all the way along. So once that plan is done, it's not like we just go, okay, thank you very much, Town of Orange, we'll see you later, or off to the next municipality. We look at it, we're building that relationship with you to help you out. And so if you have questions or things like that, we say pick up the phone and give us a call. We want to be there to help you out as you start to have questions, or as you're starting to move something down 6-8 months down the line after the adoption of the plan. That's what we're here for. So the timeline itself is about an 18-month timeline. Going through the actual project scope, we have 3 community meetings. I have a whole pile of the coordination committee meetings. I think there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I think 9 or 10 of them I have there. And that ends with a final sort of public hearing shooting for in May. The plan itself, I believe, is going to expire in that time period. So one of the first things I would do is I would actually start to draft your OPM letter and have that ready to go for your supervisor to sign, and have that be able to get submitted right away once that plan expires. And so that way you're up and available to do grants. And we did that for Newtown. We also did that for Trumbull as well, because they just got in late for getting the budgets and everything else, but OPM understands. I just give them a quick call on that stuff, and they're like, yeah, no problem. So I'm going to turn a little bit over to Suzanne, and I. We're going to talk a little bit about how our approach is to the plan itself. And one of the things that we look at, our first task, is our project kickoff. That is where we sit down with planning and zoning and staff, and we sort of finalize the last little bit of scope, where we make sure that we fully understand where you want to go and how you want to get there. And so we always look at a lot of the planning, we always put in the back of our mind is, what are our children going to see in 20 years from now, and how do we get them to come back to the municipality? And we think that's really important to keep that always in the back of the mind as we're starting to go that. So I'll turn over to Suzanne, talk a little bit about community engagement strategy. And
Thank
I'm
you,
gonna pass
Thomas.
this out.
So Thomas is passing out right now an example of a community engagement strategy that we completed recently for the city of Stamford. We're in the midst of launching an architectural competition as they look for designs for their Lathan Wider Civic Center. So as part of that, we started off the process, as we start off comprehensive plans as well, with a community engagement strategy document, and that's meant to be a guiding document throughout the process. It outlines a mix of traditional in-person, as well as some more innovative online strategies, digital outreach strategies. And the point of this community engagement strategy is also to show that our outreach strategy is supposed to be flexible, effective, and adaptable. So if we go through the process and there are certain strategies that are working better, such as online or in person, we're open to changing that community outreach strategy throughout the process to really ensure that we're reaching people wherever we can, whether that's through pop-ups is one example, so we meet people where they are, or whether that's through hosting public workshops, which are outlined in the timeline as well. We want to really provide a menu of options for people to be engaged in whatever way suits them best. So next, so next, Thomas is going to pass out an example of a summary of existing plans. So that is meant to be done early in the process as part of the project initiation to really be a foundational element of where Orange is today and how to build off of the existing plans. We don't want to forget the work that's been done recently, but rather find ways to incorporate it into moving forward. We're not starting from scratch. We want to learn from what you've already done and find ways to bring that into our plan for moving forward.
So then we move into, and we think this is really important, is to really talk to the experts within the community itself. And so we set up a bunch of meetings, both with the committees within the town, but also department staff. Department staff are the people that really are running that day-to-day stuff, and they hear a lot of things that are happening. And so we go through a whole series of interviews with them, asking them very specific questions to basically develop what are our main themes, what are the main projects, what would you like to get done, and a lot of it rolls into potential capital budget eventualities for projects. So, Suzanne, if you want to pass that
Yep.
around. This is just an example of our city. So when we did Latham Wider, this is our city department interviews. So after each interview, we give a full summary of that interview, and we basically incorporate a lot of that into what's eventually going to be your vision, goals, and objectives. So that way, when you get a plan, it's starting to reflect things that people can actually do, and then work through with the departments on what they actually can do and they cannot do. And so we've been across like certain comprehensive plans. They say, yeah, we would like to do X, and the departments go, I can't do X. And so we want to be making sure that everything is achievable within the plan itself.
Thanks, Thomas. So just to talk about online engagement, and this will be covered later on in the presentation as well in more detail, going over some of the tools we use. But there's a few key components of online engagement, and there's one component is the idea of building awareness and enthusiasm. So we want to use engagement online to make people aware of the plan, provide interim deliverables throughout the process, make sure people are staying engaged, and then also, in addition, disseminating information and gathering meaningful input. So we'll talk about what some of those plans are, but here's another example of a survey that we completed, and this is an example of sort of a hybrid online and in-person strategy. So we found that when we were in Stamford, the population we were working with on Latham Wider, some were really interested in using the internet. We had QR codes, links to surveys, and then some people really wanted to fill out a hard copy survey. So we had a hybrid approach where we set up a project website where we had a link to the survey where anyone could scan the QR code or visit online and access the survey. And then we also handed out left hard copies at key institutions throughout the city so people could go there and pick them up from the public library, from city offices, and that was a great way to get as many people involved as possible. And then we also wanted to include as many languages as possible, so we provided surveys in English, Spanish, French, and Haitian Creole to ensure that whoever wanted to have their voices heard and provide input was able to. So we'll pass out, here's an example of a Spanish survey.
One of our Spanish surveys, yeah.
Yes.
But believe it or not, we actually had, 4 people who wrote back in Haitian Creole. So again, that meant we were actually penetrating the community and getting to those hard to reach areas within the town itself, which really helped out. Because again, as we're starting to see the changes within the municipality, especially people moving in, you want to be sure that you're inclusive of everything that you're doing. The other thing is that we looked at, as Suzanne said, is the website. And so one of the first things we do with all the plan of conservation developments is we need to determine whether you will host a website or you want us to sort of put a website together. we typically, I think most municipalities like to host it themselves. And then what we do is we start feeding them all the information. So we'll start giving them flyers, we'll give them the write-ups, we'll give them all the links, and then we have them put every single document that we produce, whether it be like Newtown's data book, that goes up on the website. So again, we talked about that transparency. So you can't have a resident at the very end say, I didn't know about this. When we've pumped it out through the schools, we put it in flyers and backpacks at the schools, we've reached out to all the churches, we've reached out to the Chamber of Commerce, the businesses, everything like that. They know that a POCD is coming along. And, as part of that engagement, we talked about the 3 meetings, but, I would love, if we have a contract quick enough and we are awarded, I'd like to get to the firemen's, basically fair on August 1st, because you're gonna have so many people there and we can get a tent up right away, just announcing that, hey, the POCD is coming. We could have a survey ready and we put the QR codes and we have copies there right away. It wasn't in our plan, but, it's one of those things that we can always do like an add-in and start to make sure we have that because of the time frame. I just didn't know if we would be able to have a contract and everything else in place. But if we had a notice to proceed, that would, again, that's where I'd love to hit that, because you have so many people. I'm from Stratford, so I come up to the fair. So I know how many people you guys get there, so, all right. So again, the public workshop, typically we go POCD, we work the visions and goals, and this is where we have, it's more of a town hall open. We give a presentation, we go through a lot of the data book information that we have. We give sort of the new, or sort of orange today, and then we start to have them work in different boards throughout the room. And so typically we get a large enough space with the proper, advertising. You could have anywhere from 200 to 500 people. So Newtown, we had probably close to 400 people show up. We did it at the senior center. Just in the survey alone, I think we were at 1,200 responses back. So again, we had Newtown and Trumbull having a little bit of a competition on the number of survey responses, and Newtown edged them out. But yeah, so then from there we move into once we've got that sort of worked out, we then move into the economic corridors, transportation and housing. That's our second meeting. And that is where we start to bring maps out on tables, and we start to get the crayons out, and we really start to work through everybody on what they see in the neighborhoods. And we'll talk a little bit about that in our presentation, how we sort of do that drill down. And then lastly, after we've summarized everything, we start to present the strategies and the preliminary recommendations. So we post the plan on the website, and then we start to have people make those comments in that third public meeting, just to make sure that we are on track, and the Planning and Zoning Commission is saying, hey, this is where we really want to go with everything. So our deliverables are right there on the presentation. So we'll move into Orange Today.
Thanks, Thomas. So this is meant to be a baseline of the planning context, issues and opportunities in Orange, and understanding the town and its regional context. So the regional trends analysis, so that will take into account and identify and understand the impact of any regional trends, whether that's major developments, policy shifts, really understanding where Orange is and trying to predict how it will fit into the context moving forward. Socioeconomic conditions and trends. Thomas just handed out the data book, I believe, but that's an example of a standalone document that you'll receive throughout this process using census data and other data sources such as UConn's Geographic Information System, where we will take into account key demographics, household dynamics, labor market, various demographics to understand Orange today. And once again, this will help contribute to the baseline of that will then feed into the town plan. And then lastly, land use and zoning. So this will be an inventory of all of your current land use and zoning, understanding the existing land use, whether it's working, what are some development trends, patterns.
Vacant land.
Yeah, vacant land, open space, things like that. Yep. And the phase 2 deliverables. So this will be, you'll receive basically all of the data, methodology, a catalog of all of the work that we've done so that you can use that moving forward. And really the point of these plans, some of these tables and various analyses will be included as appendices, but we want to make sure that you have access to all of it. The plan is meant to be as visual as possible. It's not meant to be an encyclopedia, but with that being said, all of this will feed into the the town plan and understanding how to use this information moving forward, and you'll have access to all of it.
So an interesting thing is when you look at like the Newtown data book, one of the things we found was that when you started to look at the aging of the residents, there was a lot of aging in place. And so all of a sudden now they went, okay, hang on a second, we've got to redevelop the senior center, but we also need to put in more bus service in. We need more medical office buildings. So how do we rezone for medical office to address the seniors that want to age in place? And they don't want to move down to South Carolina. They're like, listen, I really like Newtown. I don't want to move yet. So how do I get those services in place? And that's one of the things now we're working through is that land use side of it. So in our commercial corridors, where can you have additional office space or for medical office? And then as well, the Fairfield Hills site, can we get some medical on right there? Because people go right to the senior center. And if we had a medical office right there, well, you're sort of getting, big bang for your buck on that one, So task 3 is really now we get into the drafting. So we've now got a really good understanding of the town of Orange. We've got all that information, and now we start to work through. So our first thing we do is we work with the introduction with the visions and goals. And so basically, this is coming back, and like Newtown, when we worked with the Planning and Zoning Commission there, it was 2 meetings, a total of about 7 hours to work through the visions and goals. Because again, I can come in and just tell you exactly what it is, but I may be wrong. And so this is where we dive down into, as we start to look at visions and goals, that will then move through each of the different chapters on how we're trying to set Orange up for the future. Again, taking into account chapter 2, the demographic, social, economic trends that we've already done. We've taken to the built environment, the land use. So again, we're looking at strategies, seeing where the town should expect changes and where new development can go and where it really shouldn't go because you don't have maybe the infrastructure, water, sewer, transportation, things like that. It also could be the historic side of stuff because again, you may want to be protecting something that, is very sacred to the town. We move into the housing and the neighborhood. So again, we're going to do a reevaluation of the planned residential development, the active adult community and the assisted housing districts within the community itself. And you're not the only one going through this. A lot of the other municipalities are doing this. We'll also look at your part of that affordable housing. So I'm doing work right now for the town of Fairfield. We're actually calculating tax abatements for a push on one development to go from 12% affordable to 20% affordable so they can get their moratorium on affordable housing in the town of Fairfield. So again, we have that experience and that's what I've got this 20-page linked spreadsheet that goes through all of this to figure this out and try to figure out, if you do think about tax abatement or how do you do this, this is sort of what you're going to be doing. Economic development. So again, as a former economic development director for the city of Stamford, this is my bread and butter, is basically looking at the commercial, industrial, and mixed-use office areas right along Route 1. I'm very familiar with it. And we've been doing a lot of market analysis lately. I just actually finished one for Tompkins County International Airport, looking at the entire market analysis for the Ithaca Metro Tompkins County area to understand how do we redevelop the airport. And so once you understand that market analysis, it works into your zoning and everything else. I did the same thing for East Hartford for their plan, which we're working on right now for Founders Plaza. I also did the Hartford Brainerd Airport redevelopment study for the state, looking at how do you redevelop the airport there. So again, we're very skilled in that real estate consulting analysis, where a lot of people don't do that when they actually look at comprehensive plans. Economic development is your real backbone to a lot of these plans, and the zoning and how you bring around that development. We'll move into transportation mobility. That's where we bring in George, mapping both the current infrastructure, then identifying any type of critical gaps we have, multimodal levels of service that we have to look at. So whether it's the hiking trails, biking trails, pedestrian, sidewalk network that you need to complete. That's what we start to map out and say, okay, as you start to move through your development, these are things that as that development comes through, this is what you're going to tag in to that development to make sure that you get your sidewalk in place. Lastly is quality of life. I'll turn it over.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. So Parks and Recreation, Public Safety, Cultural and Civic institutions. So we also saw in our proposal that open space is something that's important to the town of Orange. So my family lives in Milford now, but I'm originally from Reading, and I feel at home with the agricultural lands in Orange and understand the significance of that to the character of the community. So understanding the existing agriculture, the importance of it, ways to acquire open space, and also creating an inventory of what that existing open space is, and getting people involved within the process who are landowners and are involved in the agricultural activities as well is key to this process. And then community systems, sustainability and resilience, that's looking at the infrastructure. Community systems is basically all of the components of the infrastructure that work together to form a functioning community, and that includes sustainability. We know stormwater retention, examining stormwater runoff, and the effects of it. Rate of runoff is something that is important to you all as well. So that would go under the sustainability and resilience section as well, moving forward, figuring out what those sustainability goals are, and how to create resilient infrastructure and community system.
So lastly, once we finish all those draft chapters off, working with you, we'll submit them to you for review. It's usually in a Word document, so it makes it much easier to basically go through. And then we come in usually during one of the committee meetings and we start to work through some of this stuff. So again, we give you some homework, like we do with pretty much every planning and zoning commission. As you start to do a POCD, you will have homework from us. So it will be some of the reviews. But the nice thing is you'll have my cell phone number, so you can call me up at any time and say, Thomas, how does this work? Or
Right.
what are you looking for? So, and then we move into like the final, this is the final sprint. This is where the last little bit of the big work is that final draft POCD with the executive summary, the implementation matrix, the one-page issue summaries that we have throughout. That gets posted onto your website. You have to have that 30 days in advance for the public to be able to make comment, and then as well that 65-day review period with the COG. And so we try to make sure we line all of this up as we move along. And so with our staff meetings, we always go back and check that schedule to make sure we're in line. If we're ahead, we're falling behind, we have to sort of give some prods here and there. But then we move in once we've got everything that is now met the regulations for the state, the public hearing, statutory review, then we can move into the final revisions and then the plan adoption. And so with that, we give you the a document that is laid out, again, very graphical, and it's not like an encyclopedia, so it's very user-friendly all the way through. We look at a lot of the plans, a lot of them are just like words. And I always say, and Suzanne hears me say this all the time, picture's worth 1,000 words. If you can put the picture and have that sort of explain where you want to go, whether it be in some of the sections we do best practices and say, hey, this is what another community is doing. You may want to think about this as you start to look at your stormwater. Another community is doing something like this for their bike trails or their hiking trails. Or, as you start to look at some of your other infrastructure, whether it be schools, community centers, things like that, this is what they're doing. And so again, we can work through some of the best practices. So again, it's used as an example. So if a developer comes in and says, I would like to do X, you go back to the plan and say, okay, how do I incorporate some of these best practices into what you're going to do? So whether with sustainability, how do you do your stormwater design? So one of the things I did when I was commissioner in town of Greenberg, I was, a lot of impervious surface, we made it pervious. We did a lot of curb cuts with really interesting stormwater features, so you didn't have to build out these giant detention ponds. And so we came up with new parking lot designs. We also passed a LEED law, and so everybody didn't have to get LEED certification, but what they did have to do was at least prove it out. And so I did one building, Stop and Shop. They were really upset with me, and they're like, Thomas, you cost us all this money. The funny thing is they came back 12 months later and they're thanking me going, Thomas, we are so glad you made us do this because we're now switching every single Stop and Shop to this model that you made us do because it saved us so much money in terms of electricity and everything else. We're now running through the rest of the stores like this. So we were one of the first ones that actually had the enclosed freezers. Everything else used to be the open freezer and a lot of that stuff. Again, low VOC type finishing, things like that. All of a sudden their employers are much healthier. And so again, all of a sudden they saw it because they were forced to do it. All of a sudden they saw the payback and said, okay, we're changing how we're doing our stuff. So what we'll do is the cost proposal itself, I believe your budget was roughly about $100,000. So I broke this down into phase one, which is about $25,000. Doing that orange today, all of that land use, social economic works is about $20,000. The real money is being spent, about $35,000, just in drafting the plans, because there's a lot of work to do that. There's revisions, meetings, everything else. And then finally, we do into the final plan, it's about $12,000 to get the public hearing and everything else. The most expensive part you'll see in there is, like I said, the public workshops. When we do the 3 workshops, those are about $10,000. It's about $3,000 plus to put those on, just because all the staff that we have to bring in, all the materials that we have to print off, things like that. But what you do get, and like I can send you pictures, we have all these professional boards done up. We have people stationed everywhere, and we are trying to draw as much information out of the residents who show up to this, to get them to talk to us about where they would like to see Orange go and what's really important to them. So
Good.
I think we have about 7 or 8 minutes here. So we'll go quickly through the community engagement approach. This is just our Riverhead. So
Yeah, sure. So this is an example of some of the different modes that we use to reach people. Here's an example of a workshop flyer. And as you can see on here, there's also a public workshop flyer as well. This meeting was held in an old theater, which was a creative approach. And we also had a website, and you can actually watch the public workshop. So we often will take videos of the presentations and post them online so that people who can't attend are still able to watch it back, stay involved. There's also roundtable exercises that's where you can get some of the more one-on-one conversations. People aren't always comfortable speaking in front of groups, but it's just as valuable to have someone's words on a sticky note or have that face-to-face interaction that can bring out new information. The next page is an example of an ideas wall. So this is a program, one of our many tools that we use. This is called Social Pinpoint. And this is essentially a forum that allows people to post their comments regarding the various sections of the plan. So we have parks and open space, sidewalks and streetscapes, arts, culture. And this allows them to envision how they want to see their community be improved. People can comment on each other's, we look over these to make sure that everything is appropriate, obviously, but people comment on each other's posts, can react, and you can really see what ideas gain a lot of traction, where people are focusing their attention. And that's the ideas wall, which is essentially like sticky notes online. And then to the right, you can see the map. And that's a way where people can point out on a map, location specific, areas that they want to see improved, things they love about their neighborhood, and that allows us to pinpoint on specific locations to understand what areas we should focus on and what's gaining the most traction. The next page is an example of some of what I was saying before in terms of pop-up meetings. We love to meet people where they are, whether that's a farmer's market, an arts fair, fireman's fair, carnival, and that's a way of getting people that might not typically be the loudest in the room or might not typically be the ones that go out of their way to attend a public workshop, to spread awareness, to hear what they have to say, and to bring them into the process and have them come along to the rest of the meetings. We also are able to, there's an example on the bottom, meeting with high school and middle school students. We did this in Trumbull as well. They have a really unique perspective, and they really are the future. And we ask them questions. What would it take for you to move back to Orange? What would it take for you to raise your family here, to work here in the future, to understand why they would or would not want to stay in their community, what they'd like to see more of. Are there places for teens to hang out, for kids to hang out? It's a completely different perspective that sometimes gets left out but is extremely important. On the right is a flyer in Spanish from Meriden. We often do multilingual engagement materials, especially flyers and printed materials. That way people feel welcomed and included and able to attend. Thomas is going to talk a little bit about this, yeah.
So one of the things that we do is we take all that information, and this is what I was talking about, is our approach to focus areas within Orange. So we take a lot of the citywide concepts, we take the survey, the social pinpoint, and then we start to bring it down to sort of that mid-scale within that area. And so basically the lower density residential areas, we start to be able to develop themes and visions specifically on that, and then we can then move it more specifically into a small area. So if, say there's something along Route 1, and you've got certain malls along there and strip centers in there that need to be redeveloped, we can take what we have in the large citywide and what we're hearing and the market analysis, and we can move it more into that long block scale, and then we can move it into more site-specific and what we'd like to see. And so we can do that both on the commercial side, but also on the residential side. So again, as you start to see more residential, say, pop up, like right behind the Home Depot, you know, again, how do you start to take the neighborhood's wishes into stuff like that? And I remember doing the cut through, going down to the car wash behind the Taco Bell and everything else, you know, coming out through that when I used to go up to both, oh shoot, it's not there, Christmas Tree Shop and, you know, into there, because my wife loved to go there. But we always used to cut through. We were one of those people. So again, I'm very familiar with some of the cut throughs and everything else in Orange. But again, how do you start to address some of those issues as you start to look at that redevelopment? So if, say, oh, I don't know, Stu Leonard's would like to pop back up again, you know, how do you start to address some of those issues? So, and then a couple more slides left, and then we'll be done.
Yeah, this is a case study of a master plan from Edison, New Jersey. On the left is land use opportunities. So that was taken out of analysis, geographic analysis, as well as community engagement. And that's almost like a heat map to show where different contextual solutions, opportunities could take place. And the idea was to move that into what you see on the right, which is the actual implementation of recommended zoning map changes. So we were able to take the ideation phase, the brainstorming, the opportunities analysis, and bring that into what could you actually implement, what zoning text, what code amendments could you make that would bring this plan to life. The next page is a continuation of this case study. So as Thomas said before, our goal is to make it so that this plan doesn't just sit on a shelf, it actually gets implemented. And you can see here, this is an example of different priorities, and they're ranked in difficulty. So what is the low-hanging fruit? What can you implement today, tomorrow, in the next year? What will take longer, 5 to 10 years? And what's your long-term vision in the future? And really being able to prioritize those based on your wishes, what's feasible, and what the community wants as well.
So, and we also, in the matrix itself, we actually identify the departments that are going to be responsible for this. So again, that's part of your implementation phase, is we identify everything in here, how difficult it's going to be, and then help you work through some of those plans as we start to look at it.
Okay.
Then we're almost done here. So the next two slides are showing the graphic capabilities. So we use hand-drawn, Adobe, Illustrator, InDesign, Photoshop, Affinity. We have access to, as Thomas said, as being part of Perkins Eastman, we have access to a whole suite of graphic capabilities that allow us to bring the plan to life. We want it to be graphically rich. We don't want it to be dry. People aren't going to necessarily be as engaged if it's not something that's easily understandable. Infographics are a great way to point out key information, what people should be paying attention to, and also present it in a way that's easy to understand and engage with. The next page is just an example of the narrative approach to analysis and storytelling. So, for example, in the Orange Day chapter, instead of presenting you with tables, pages and pages of tables with small numbers that you have to use a magnifying glass to see, we want to find ways to tell that through, to show that through infographics, through maps, through various illustrative techniques that will point out the key characteristics, and then you can have all the data in an appendix for you to analyze if you'd like. We think it's also important to have branding for the plan. This creates a unique identity for the plan and really brings enthusiasm, legitimacy to it. And these are examples of past logos we've made that create a unique identity color scheme that's used throughout, easily identifiable. That way, if people see it, they know that that's what it is.
And when you look at the study for New Haven, you'll see the design that we did for the H and the hill, so it's sort of all interconnected, and it sort of shows the plans that were already in place. So
the next two slides are just examples of other tools we have access to, such as Urban Footprint. This is one way that allows us to run quick land use scenarios, and it's just an example of a tool we can use for data visualization. that if you wanted to look at, for example, a quick analysis of housing hazard zones, we can spit out a map for you within minutes, and that can help fuel future conversations and future areas of inquiry for that.
And then lastly, just to talk a little bit, I wanted to dive a bit into the transportation, because that's always an issue within a lot of municipalities. So we're going to do very much a high-level look. We're going to look at sort of cost-effective utilization of existing data. So basically looking at all the projects and how that interacts with everything. You know, one of the things I learned in Stanford is like UI and DOT, the coordination for some of these projects don't meet up. And so if we start to be able to plan out some of the stuff, you're not paving a road and then having UI come rip it all up and then put in their new electrical lines or something like that, or DOT coming through after you've just finished up everything. So again, we start to look at that. We look at crash data history. So again, if you're going back to the COG and say, I need to redesign this intersection, we have some of that stuff that we start to work with you for. And then as well, we look at your complete streets. You know, you've had your complete streets for a while now, but how effective is it and how much of that has really been implemented? So again, as we start to draw out some of these maps, that's one of the things we'll analyze. And then as well as it translates back into, when you look at development, what are your site plan requirements? And so how do you start to implement that as exactions from the developers to get those in right away so that it's being done? I was famous in Greenberg for sidewalks to nowhere, but over a period of 8 years, I got them all connected. So if you came in, you were building a sidewalk for me. And so, you know, it worked out very, very well, because now I was able to start connecting main streets back in the neighborhoods. We used a lot of Safe Route to School money to be able to connect schools into different neighborhoods or bike paths along those. So again, we start to help lay the foundation for, one, your capital projects, but two, your grants. So this is where the POCD is very, very important, because it gives you those ideas and say, okay, here's these projects from the implementation and the objectives and goals. Here's what we want to go after, because now we've got the backing documentation that says, this is the reason why we're going for this grant, and this is the reason why we need to do this. So with that, my last slide is why us? Well, we have the master planning experience in Connecticut. I think we have an incredible toolbox of innovative strategies that we're able to use. And we're really starting to refine a lot of these over the last couple of years, as more and more computer programs are coming out to help us out, that allow the municipalities to visualize this data. Before it was just sort of done in ArcGIS and some hand-drawn maps, but now we are like getting some really interesting stuff. You know, we do create these plans that are very visually engaging. Again, it's not an encyclopedia with just nothing but words. We're very much text-based now. So again, typically on a plan like this, as we go through the chapters, we'll have a small write-up in the front. We'll be very, very visual-based. But then we go into the issues and opportunities, and we basically start pulling out all that stuff that then leads into your vision, goals, and objectives. So you don't need to see all that data. We put that as appendices in the back. You don't need that data book. That's an appendice. All the write-ups, appendices. That is your backing documentation. It does not need to be in the front of the books anymore, because you want to get right to the meat. You know, so when a developer or someone else comes in, what are we trying to do, and how did we get there? So typically, like I said, we have the capacity. We only go after jobs we can complete, and we have the staff to do it. I don't chase everything down. I only go after specific stuff. So my Newtown and Trumbull plan are starting to finish up. So this actually slots in very nicely for the startup when we go and finish up with Newtown and that. And then as well, senior level commitments. So it's not like I show up here and that's it, the last you see of me. I am here at every meeting. I am here at everything. So we commit our senior people to this. So Frank Fish, who couldn't be here tonight, but he comes to all the public meetings. But you have myself as the associate principal. I am here for everything. So again, if there's a problem, you call me right away. If there's something missing, you call me right away. We go get it done for you, okay? At the end of this, we want you to be extremely satisfied, because again, as I said before, we look at this as a partnership for the future. You know, so that as you start to roll things along, Jack, you may call me up and, hey, Thomas, I've got a site plan coming in. How would I write up this approval to make sure I get that exaction? And I just go, here, this is what I did over in Greenberg. Here's an example. I just send it to you. I'm not charging you for it, but I look at it as planners and especially as residents of Connecticut. We all have to work together. The only thing I probably didn't talk about in the economic development side is I'm actually the chair of the best practices for CETUS, the Connecticut Economic Development. I don't believe Orange submitted, and I would like to try to get you guys into like gold status, or at least get you guys set up to be able to do something like that, to apply, get a nice plaque. But it says that you guys are economic development ready for Connecticut. So that's one of the other things that I'd like to try to get done as we start to go through the checklist on the economic development side.
Okay.
And with that, we're happy to answer any questions. I know we were
Yeah.
pretty.
Well, yeah, questions, anybody?
I just wanted to touch on the, when you're talking about creating the visions, goals, and objective section, you're using the outreach segment to get input from all of the department heads of the various town elements, all of the commissions in the town who have their perspective.
Yep.
And then the community at large through outreaches at schools, churches, and
Yep.
public events, as well as the other sites. And that's the database. You're extracting our visions, goals, and
Correct.
objectives, not yours.
Exactly.
Correct.
Okay.
So it's pretty labor intensive, because you have to go through, and we sort through a lot of stuff that we go through. Again, a lot of the things, some stuff we hear doesn't make the cut. So this is your plan. It is Planning and Zoning Commission's plan on behalf of the town, who runs this. And so basically we take into account, here's all the stuff that we have heard. Do you agree with it or do you not agree with it? If you don't agree with it, I just go strike, it's done, it's out of there. Do I agree with it? Or, hey, Thomas, Suzanne, can you elaborate a little bit more? Can you go a little bit more depth into that in terms of our strategies and things like that? So,
And in the proposal, since you've been in government, if the budget was this number, should we be expecting that at some point we're gonna need some ad service thing to implement some sort of graphic representation or diving down in a specific area, or that's pretty much?
what you have there, unless you're asking me to do something that is out of scope,
Okay,
okay, that is when I'll come back with a change order and say, Mr. Cornell, I appreciate what you've told me and what you've asked for me. However, it is not in the scope. I will need to do a change order and it's going to cost you X.
so as just like an example, if we wanted language for a text amendment to implement a zone recommendation, that would be outside
That
this
would be outside the
particular
scope because all we're doing is identifying what needs to be done. And that's typically your next implementation side is to start rewriting that zoning.
That wouldn't be, what you're talking about wouldn't be part of the plan of conservation and
Yeah.
development.
No,
Yeah.
I'm just trying
It
to
would come-
clear in my mind that, in a
You would be available for hire
We would be available
Yeah.
for hire, yes.
at some
Okay.
point later
Yeah.
to,
okay, but this budget gets us to the document.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I guess I could have started there.
Yeah.
All right.
Tom, anything?
No, I'm all set.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for your
Thank you
time.
for
We
your
really
time.
appreciate it.
Yeah, very detailed proposal, and you gave us a lot more to study.
We appreciate it.
We'll do that, and we'll talk again.
Thank you.
Perfect.
All right.
I just want to make sure that, like I said, we typically when we do these interviews, we always seem to have, there's always seems to be questions, because I've done so many of these interviews, sitting in your side. And so, it's like, oh, I should have asked this question. So we wanted to make sure that we are covering everything for you. So in case when you go to make a decision, at some point later on, you go, oh yeah, we did promise we were gonna do that.
Right.
So,
Okay.
Or, no, I didn't say that. So Jack, I'm gonna give you that extra one right there.
All right.
All right.
Have a great
Thank
evening.
you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right. Sure.
Yes. Sure,
Yeah.
yeah, we can have them set up. We can
Let's take a 5-minute break.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're back from our break, and we're all set to hear the presentation from Colliers regarding their proposal on the plan of conservation and development for the town of Orange. With us this evening then from Colliers, can you introduce yourselves, please?
I'm Debbie Lawler. I'm the former director of our planning department, and I now am the business development manager for our company. Is that on?
Just make sure that green light is on.
Yep, it's on.
Thank you.
And with me today is one of our senior project managers, Jacob Robeson, from our Madison office.
Okay, great. Well, we've gotten a chance to look over your proposal, and we're happy you're here tonight. Maybe you want to spend a little time walking us through it.
Sure.
Pointing us to giving us the high points, and,
Okay.
maybe ask a few questions, and we'll,
Sure.
do it.
We passed out kind of like our slideshow as a handout tonight. So we're just going to go through, give you a little introduction about our firm and our staff that would be working on a project like this, our approach to the overall project, how we like to do community engagement, some examples of what we've done that would be very similar to this POCD. So just by way of introduction, Colliers Engineering and Design, many of you see the Colliers signs all around Connecticut. That's the Colliers brokerage arm. About 5 years ago now, Colliers brought a major interest in the firm that we were a part of called Mazer Consulting. And since then, Mazer, and under the Colliers umbrella, has bought a number of different firms. So our firm is over 40 years old. Terms, we used to say that we did everything but architecture and MEP, mechanical engineer, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, but now we do all of that also. A large part of our business is for municipalities. We actually serve as planning board, zoning board, town planners, redevelopment planners. So we do a lot of planning through our planning division and discipline. We deal with all aspects of planning, whether it's housing, affordable housing, the land use aspects. We do quite a bit of community engagement. I'm the former president and a former commissioner of the American Institute of Certified Planners nationally, and I was on the executive board of the American Planning Association nationally. With that, I have done community engagement all over the country on many different types of projects. One of my favorite is the Master Plan Comprehensive Type Plan, which is what the Connecticut Plan of Conservation and Development is all about. And also by profession, I'm an environmental planner as well as a land use planner. Many of our staff have that type of background also. And then we also bring a lot of design capabilities to the table. So when either you're doing engagement or whether you're document preparation, concept designs, you like to be able to show that, like to be able to take people's thoughts and create a vision out of it. That visual aspect of it is really important to the public, so we like to be able to bring that to the table. We have staff that work almost entirely on recreation type planning, open space conservation type projects, trails, ball fields, and that aspect of it. And then we have, staff that does all the mapping that go along with these types of planning events and planning projects. So as part of the team, what we would envision is that I would oversee the engagement part of it. Jacob would be the project manager to oversee the actual plan development. We have another very high senior level planner, Kimberly Baptiste, who would do the quality control on such a project. We have a senior planner, Nicholas Dickerson, who is AICP. He would be involved with it. We would bring in a transportation engineer because you have, some major roadways in terms of the Boston Post Road and things like that, where as we want to bring other land uses or discuss land uses, I think that you're going to have transportation as an aspect that you would want to be looking at, not just local circulation, but also how traffic is passing through. And then we have a landscape designer, GIS specialist, and a civil engineer that we would bring in. And a lot of our civil work also deals with not only construction on the private side or looking at, economic development aspects, but also public-type facilities, infrastructure that you might be looking at. So it could be your utilities that would come into play during master planning being done at a community level. So I'm going to turn it over now and let Jacob talk a little bit about our project approach and timeline and about the way that we like to do engagement.
Sure. Thank you, Deb, for the really great introduction to what Colliers is. So we're going to be on page 4, starting with the engagement toolkit. So we're starting with engagement right now because we see engagement as a cornerstone of POCD processes, and we want to start out with it to let you know that we're going to continue it throughout the whole process of the plan. So we have here our engagement toolkit from which you can choose different sorts of engagement tactics, strategies that you feel like would be the best to engage the public. So at the beginning of the planning process, we'll sit down with you all, the steering committee for the project, and talk about what's the best way to engage the town. So one opportunity is a town tour where we potentially come out to some of the major issue spots of the town and some of the major intersections, open spaces that you want to talk about and feel like are going to be the major parts of the plan that we set goals on. Another thing is the monthly planning and zoning commission meetings, where those are going to be quasi-public, I believe. They're meeting in this room and talk about the progress of the plan, how the plan is going, bring you major decision points on the plan, and any fixes or ways we can improve the planning process. We have, you mentioned in the RFP, a public workshop where we will be, where we have an opportunity to get major feedback from the public and have stations around a room where they can come and discuss, have interactive activities where they can give us feedback. And meetings with boards and commissions, officials, advocacy groups, and community stakeholders, either that be one-on-one or in focus groups. So that's another thing that we can sit down and talk about, say like, hey, we can combine these different stakeholders, whether they be from advocacy groups, farmers. That's going to be a big thing with the open space part of the plan. So those are the different engagement, in-person meeting type opportunities that we have. On the next slide, we have our toolkit of virtual engagement. We have the ability to do an interactive map where we set up an online map where people can go to place pins on different areas where they want to comment on. We can make it so that simple as like just a comment that they want to leave, or we can break it down into like, this is the different types of comments that they want to have. So that's the opportunity for the interactive map, and we also have a survey. As you can see, there's a couple options here for questions, whether it be a yes or no question or a multiple choice question. We can do visual preference, whether it be like forms of development that they like to see or they don't like to see. So that can be done in a survey.
And one thing that we like to do is that with community engagement if you're going to use a survey, or if you're going to use like an interactive map, we like to also use those at other events so that they would be the same thing. Your survey questions remain the same no matter what group you're working with. So if it's a community workshop, like you're doing a charrette, where you have people around tables, we would use similar maps. We would use similar surveys, so that no matter where you're gathering them, ultimately, they could all be pulled together. And then you get a good example is we're working on one project now on the coast with 4 municipalities. It's Old Saybrook, Westbrook, Fenwick, and Clinton. Okay, so we were doing these in all the different towns, and in order to pull them together and compare apples to apples, whether we were meeting in person, we would gather the information and they would take a sticky note and put them on the map, right? If they wanted to do it on an interactive map online, the nice part about it is it's 24/7. People could do it on their own time. They literally go into the program, they drop a pin, and like Jacob was saying, it kind of like opens up a sticky note that you write your comment on. So you could say, at this corner, we think, there's this that needs to be done, or we'd love to see this. And then what he was talking about with the visual preference is that we could give people ideas to say, like, do you only want a 2-story building, or do you want to see a 3-story building? Would you be willing to have shops, on the lower level and housing above? Give them examples and let it be a yes or no, or I like this thing over this thing. So it becomes very interactive, and as long as you keep it from from event to event or group to group that you're meeting with, you're able to just pull the information together and then give a really concise, feedback loop on that, which is really nice. And you could actually then put it online so that the rest of the community could see what's taking place.
Yeah, we find that people love to have that feedback, that when they post a comment online, that the rest of the community can see what they're commenting, and they can also see what the rest of the community is also commenting. So it's that really like feedback. It makes it exciting to do this web map. So we're gonna move into the next page, which is page 5. So this is part of the plan process. So first, what we want to do is we want to get to know the community character of Orange. And the last plan, that was the #1 asset that people felt that was most important about Orange. It was the character, it's the people, it's the open spaces that they really enjoy about the plan. And we understand that that's very important to them. So we really want to get to know at the start of this plan what makes Orange tick, what's so special about it that makes people love living here. So we want to review the previous plans. So that would be reviewing the existing POCD that was done in 2015, the affordable housing plan that was done by SCROG, and the state POCD and the regional transportation plan to see what sorts of things are relevant to Orange. So we would discuss accomplishments that were done, that were completed from the last POCD, and discuss how to modify the planning processes that have been taken place in previous projects, and how we can adjust them to meet certain current needs. So I already did a pretty big review of the existing POCD and affordable housing plan, and know a lot about them already, but we want to go in and if we're chosen, do a deeper dive of each for those reasons that I previously mentioned. Doing a community profile is next. I know that was done pretty well in the last POCD, so just picking up on where that left off, kind of the things that changed in the last 10 years, picking up that stuff, and then moving on to the land use and development memorandums. Those were very well set out by the town in RFP. And it's good to see that you have a very clear priorities for this plan. And we want to do our best to meet those priorities. So proposed are 7 land use memorandums. Growth and housing, which will analyze population growth and housing needs, analyze the regulations of the PRD, active adult community, assisted living district, along with infrastructure needs of these developments and state statutes. We know that there are these different housing districts are close to around Route 1 and south of that. So we know that the infrastructure needs of those are going to be interacting with those uses, those economic development uses that are there. Next is land capacity. We're going to conduct a build-out potential of analysis of all of the zones here in the city, along with establishing lot information that was requested, stormwater information, runoff rates, infrastructure needed to mediate runoff, and identification of farm, forest, and open spaces that fall under PA 490. Next is regionalism. We're going to meet with NVCOG and SCROG to determine potential future regional developments that will affect Orange, and then we will do an assessment of how exactly these will affect Orange, whether it be upstream developments or upland developments that will add more runoff to the city's already burgeoning runoff issues. I don't know if those were remediated within the last 10 years, but I know that was pretty big.
In the works, yeah.
Yeah, it's still in the works. So definitely working on those, and and other issues that could be caused by regional developments, whether more traffic in or around Orange, more housing needed in Orange, stuff like that. Land use change, assessing areas where developers may make land use change proposals, and then identifying areas where we expect there to be static use, not changing. We're going to combine the study of market research and also discussions with the NVCOG and SCROG to determine that. Open space, identifying aspects of Bridgeport's, I used to work for the city of Bridgeport, of Orange's open space network and how it is an asset to community character, as I said before. So we want to take a deep dive into the existing open space and develop a policy with stakeholders about how to maintain and acquire more open space. And the last, second to last, land use memorandum, economic development, where we analyze the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities of new development. As I said before, I know that there is only a very finite area where economic development happens. And that means that the economic development that happens there needs to be done efficiently. There needs to be analysis of how they interact with each other, what the form and physical look of the buildings is. When you only have a very defined area, you want to make sure that it's well done and efficient. And then our last is the road network, where we assess the provided traffic issue areas. We want to go back and talk with the traffic engineering and police departments to maybe suss out more issue areas, and then discuss how needs are not being met in those areas. And then we have a depth of on staff traffic engineers that we can work with to provide solutions for those. And then, so the graphic here is an existing conditions analysis from one of our other plans. I really like this one because it's so dynamic and gives really good analysis and call outs. So that's something like what we can produce here. And then moving on to page 6, building the actual plan. So we start off with an analysis of needs, impacts, and obstacles. So we're going to amalgamate the information that's shared with us by residents, business owners, town staffs, and boards and commissions into common themes, which will lend itself to the creation of a vision for the town. Next is synthesizing the findings of the land use memorandums. We feel like the land use memorandums are going to be the major part of the recommendations for the plan. Like you, as I said before, the PZC here, you guys have very clear goals for this, and we want to move forward with those goals. So working with stakeholders to provide policy recommendations for open space, appropriate housing, regional development, land use change, efficient economic development, storm resiliency, and more things that'll help position Orange to thrive within the next 10 years. And then the last is actually building the plan and action item matrix documents. So the plan will be informative and graphically oriented, which meets the requirements of Connecticut General Statutes 823. And then building an action item matrix of projects and very data-driven goals to realize the community's vision for Orange. And we feel that setting those benchmarks and goals and being really data-driven will be the best help for helping Orange accomplish its goals.
And also, when you create the action item matrix, it serves as kind of like the checklist, so that when you go to implement things, you'll be able to say, over this 10 years, we did this, we did that. You know, it'll take the plan and it'll create your to-do list. And that's really important, because I think that a lot of times a plan gets created and it ends up sitting on a shelf, and people kind of forget that the intent is to implement what you say. So you want to be able to actually create a track record over time. You know, how much of this were we able to accomplish? And it's very black and white when you start to put it into a matrix type of format. Here's our, you know, goals and objectives, and here's the action item, and we did it. You know, so that's, it's good from a policy perspective. It's good from being able to share with the community how you're actually, you know, taking what the thoughts of the community were and making them happen.
And so lastly, we have here a schedule. So this is our first crack at it. We will, if we're chosen, we'll let you all review it and then decide if this looks like what you feel like it should, and then we can work on revising it if there are any revisions that are needed.
Yeah, basically, it's a 12-month, you know, schedule. But I guess what Jacob is basically saying is the boxes can be moved around a bit, okay? And we do see community engagement going throughout your entire process. So it shouldn't only be like at the beginning where you engage the public. It should be a feedback loop. In the end, you want to be able to report out to them, you know, we heard this, you know, any other comments before we actually get to writing the plan. So that goes throughout.
And
Okay, I think we're
it's
gonna
on to you.
just give you a few ideas of some example projects that we've done. From a company perspective, we've done hundreds of master plans, comprehensive plans, and plans of conservation and development type of, you know, plans overall. Most of them are 10-year plans. Most states that we work in have a very similar requirement. We do a ton of work in the areas in Connecticut and surrounding states, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and then we're down the East Coast still doing planning, like a lot in the Carolinas also. Very, very similar in terms of the formulas of creating the comprehensive plans. In terms of an example that we have with White Marsh Township in Pennsylvania, this one, built a comprehensive development plan with the town for a special focus on land use and housing strategies. Those were two of their main areas identified. This one actually had zoning code recommendations made during the process. We were hired afterwards to start to create the zoning code revisions for them. So they had a lot of conflicting districts, things that they wanted to change once we were in the process, and that's led to the next step. And this one also dealt with some protections for floodplain, wetlands, and natural resource management. In the Lakeville Village Planning Study, we performed a study for Lakeville analyzing aspects of their public infrastructure, especially the roadways and circulation. They wanted to have the green spaces more accessible. They had a trail that they wanted to connect to different areas, especially very large lake, seasonal populations were involved there. Parking needs they had, and then a lot of green infrastructure work that we were doing with them. This one also led to another study, the Salisbury Village Center, and it led to another study that was their open space plan. In Union Township, New Jersey, this plan was an amazing comprehensive plan. They it had a very large virtual presence to it because it was being done during COVID. The plan is beautiful. You can access it online. They are implementing a number of redevelopment projects from this. It would be things like you have along the Boston Post Road, some of it where you already had development, some of them strip malls. Some of them were starting to see vacancies. They wanted to figure out alternative uses or how to make them more productive, how to make them nicer looking. So a lot of that was built into the plan. Quite a bit of community engagement, numerous charrettes were involved in this one. And then there were a lot of one-on-one stakeholder meetings. In terms of the Lakeville one that I just talked about, we had a lot of focus group meetings with that one around different topic areas. And then there were aspects of things like historic preservation that we were dealing with in the Union one. There was traffic. They had a lot of redevelopment areas that we were dealing with. And their community facilities. They've since gone on. We are the town redevelopment planner there now. We're the town engineer in Union. And they are in the middle of redoing major developments like their town hall. And they put in a transit-oriented development along their main streets there. In terms of the Hartford Arrowhead neighborhood, that's a little bit different because it's an urban area, but it had the community engagement was very intense in this community. If you know anything about Hartford, there's the Albany Avenue area of Hartford. That's primarily what this was surrounding, but it brought the neighborhood out. It actually got champions behind the projects that came out of this. So some of the church communities were involved, and they're moving on to the next stage of making the plan go from document to implementation, which is nice to see some of that stuff already taking place. They actually tried some active street changes. So sometimes you do this with like a parklet. I don't know if you've seen them, like if there's a restaurant and you want to see if outside dining is going to work, you kind of like box it off and you try it out, right? Well, here they actually closed a street off and tried to see, you know, how can you make this more active for cyclists? How can you make it more engaging for the community to have a gathering spot? So they tested it out right on the ground with the community. The next one that I'm going to talk about is, and the final one is our Lansing, New York Open Space Index and Conservation Plan. This one, and you have a lot of conservation land in town, so this is kind of an interesting correlation with that. But this one took the information about the conservation lands, the open space, created a database for the town so that they got better idea of what their assets are, the natural resources that are there, priority areas for preservation because they may be open space but not preserved. So we worked with them on that. And it was done as a GIS tool that the town was able to then take over through their GIS system and keep the database running. And so it assessed natural, scenic, and cultural resources by parcel, gave them different values, and they worked with the steering committee in order to get to the values of the sites. And then it contained recommendations on implementing it and also dealt with potential funding strategies. Colliers Engineering has a grants department that continuously comes out, they research the funding potential for different things that towns want to do, and they direct us to different sources as they're coming online. So it may be, if we're working with you, it may be in the middle of the project, we're gonna say, hey, there's money for, parks implementation right now. Do you want that written in? Do you wanna know about it? Do you wanna start even before you're finished, But what we like to do, when we talked about the implementation matrix, is to have a column that actually talks about funding potential. So if we know of a source, if we know of either state funding, federal funding, or local options, those would be identified in the matrix. And so I think that that's quite a bit of what we presented in our proposal and wanted to talk to you about. A few things that I mentioned is that recommendations would be made that also refer to zoning. We have the ability to actually help with zoning changes if necessary. We also do a lot of work with design guidebooks. So many times you see design standards and they're written out, but people don't necessarily understand what the town wants. What is the look that the town wants? We've actually been going on and recommending things like design guidebooks or design palettes. Are there colors? Are there materials? How do you want to elevate the look of the town? That would come in while we're doing the plan, and then it could always be a recommendation that actually gets implemented later on. Create something that's much more visual so people understand what the town wants in terms of the visual appearance, the character of the community.
When you say implementing, you mean by changing the regulations or?
By actually
Or by actually-
creating the design guidebook. And then usually what we do is have it referenced in the zoning, the same way that you would design guidelines, reference it that directs developers or potential applicants to this document so that they use it as a guide for the actual aesthetic of the community
So that
that
when
you're looking
we
for.
look at the question of whether the proposed project is consistent with the plan of conservation and development, we point to that language in
Yes.
the plan of
Yes, you would say,
conservation.
as long as you go through and you
this-
implement that, yes, you
Yeah.
would say that was the intent of our POCD. Mhm. And the other thing is concepts for change. In the final document, there's visuals that go along with it. And our staff does a lot of renderings, like what something could look like, whether it's, the type of development that you want to see, whether it's something from the conservation perspective. We have a very visual plan that we generally put together. Any questions?
I was just thinking, in our plan of conservation and development, there's reference to that funny sort of intersection of Orange Center Road. Help me out here. Yeah,
Ridge Road?
yeah, Ridge Road,
Where
yeah.
it's kind of like a fork.
Offset.
Yeah, it's like a,
Yeah.
I don't know what you would call it. It's very,
Five-way intersection.
you
Yeah.
drive through very, very
Mhm.
carefully.
Yeah.
Yep.
And there's reference in that to our plan of conservation, but I don't, what the reference was, there was no way of resolving it in any way, no, I mean, so if we were to take that up, for example? I mean, would we come up with something in the plan of conservation and development that would solve that problem? I mean, to the extent it's a problem, you know.
It wouldn't be
traffic-wise.
designed.
Not traffic-wise.
Right,
but
it wouldn't be
safety-wise.
designed in your POCD, but ideas could be put in your POCD as to how it could be done. Think about
Well, that's what I'm.
something like a five-way intersection in Glastonbury where they used a small, circle.
Right.
And they're doing it, right? It
Yeah.
could be things like that that get into your plan, and they have to be checked. Is it feasible?
Yeah.
Do you have enough land to do that type of stuff? Do you, can the, right, curves be implemented in
It
that
wouldn't be
site?
designed,
Right,
but,
it's not
you know.
designed,
No, but,
your
it's-
concepts are laid out for you, yes.
Right, it just seems like in our plan of conservation and development, those things are identified, but it's like, you know, there's no hint of how we might ever accomplish it, you know what I
Well,
mean?
and
Or like,
so-
you know, more, the worst one is that, you know, Orange Center Road, Racebrook, the Post Road, that's,
That's a very
Yeah.
large intersection.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, but, you know, what could conceivably be done?
Yeah.
Well, that's where, on the team, we've identified one of our traffic engineers. He's from Connecticut. He actually worked on the Salisbury project also, and came up with general concepts like that, where potential changes, some of them he actually did scope out in terms of, because they have truck traffic radiuses and stuff like that, can you make this turn? But the actual engineered design is not part of your POCD. The concepts are ideas of how to make that happen. And sometimes there may be two ideas that you're given, three ideas that you're given.
So what we'll do in the POCD is basically give you concepts of what you want to see, like different strategies for remediating that intersection. And what that will help with is a grant application, which will help with identifying funding sources for it. And then you can put together a grant application with what we give you. And then it'll help, that's what the state wants to see is the concept.
And that it ties back to your POCD.
Right.
And that.
And there's some hint as to how it might be accomplished.
Yes.
Because I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I just feel like now it's the existence of that situation is identified.
Well, I think that we always looked at, it was written before I got here, the POCD as more as guidance than
Right.
action. It's like,
Yeah.
these are the feelings that we want you to
Yeah.
then turn into, realities over time.
Right, because,
And that's exactly right when it comes to your comprehensive plans, is that they are your wish list. They're also things that you want to be your guiding principles, but by having action items in there, it leads you to actually working on projects. It's
right.
not meant to be the plan that sits on the shelf.
Yeah.
like,
It's meant to guide things.
when do we talk about our plan of conservation and development? Whenever we're approving an application,
Right.
we're reacting
Right.
to an application, and we find it to be consistent with our plan of conservation and development, and we approve it, or not,
Well-
depending on what what we see.
Well, in some respects, I guess it goes to how satisfied are you with the status quo? In that if everything is basically okay with a few, tweaks and changes over time, as opposed to let's burn it down and start over again, which seems to be a guiding principle these days.
Yeah, but if you had like these, architectural design standards, applicable on the Post Road or whatever, you could immediately begin to bring a new look to the Post Road if that's what you were interested in doing.
Right.
So you're not really burning anything down.
No, I understand, and we have gotten stung before in the town by not regulating ugly. But on the other hand, you know, I recall, I think there was a Supreme Court case up in Simsbury where they wanted to regulate the color of the McDonald's logo. And, you know, that was, you know, a patent or a trademark infringement, but, you know, and they got shot down. But, I mean, do we want to be
Well,
that?
you know what, it's not that you're being that prescriptive, but it's that you're trying to get more of a look. So, heck, there's towns that do regulate signs very well, but when they come to something like, yes, Target has the big red and white, you know, ball type of thing, right? But that doesn't mean that it can be, you know, 50 by 50.
Yeah.
You know, there are limitations. There are some towns that don't want to let these big signs going up 40 feet in the air. You know, that's part of the character too. You know, they have them down lower. So there are things that you can do to try to bring back a look that you want. You know, kind of
Or
like
if
reel it in a
If it
little.
was never there to start it.
Yeah, you don't want the big purple and yellow shoe store, you know, going up, which I have seen happen.
Like, well, you know, a lot of times we get an application, we say, what's, you know, it's better than what's there now. And maybe that's not the best way to look at it, you know what I mean?
No, it's, are we more reactive in nature, or do we have a plan we want to implement?
Yeah,
Yeah.
You know?
And having the plan that you want to implement, it kind of starts, it establishes kind of a floor and it helps developers understand, like, this is what you're going for. It doesn't just give them carte blanche to do basically anything that they want to.
Right.
I know that on the post road in the last comprehensive plan, there was a lot of people who said they want to improve the character of the post road.
right.
So, you know, if you have a standard that says, like, okay, we're expecting this much from developers, that is what you establish in the comprehensive plan.
Something that could be used to point out maybe if a developer comes in with something that we're not favorable on.
Yeah.
We outlined possible concepts here that
Right.
you're not really in line with, and we would rather, you know, see something in this direction
Yeah.
for this in the future.
Yeah, and it's more attractive to them because it kind of makes it easier for them, because they're not coming
They're
in with.
reading the script, yeah.
They're reading the script, they're not coming in with not knowing what the expectation is gonna
Right,
be.
right, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the other thing is, in terms of like area, what are we, there's a large part of Orange that doesn't really, I mean, you know, my sense is, you know, we would say it doesn't really need our attention. It is, you know,
Oh, that's
the
very
large,
true.
the large residential
Yeah.
district north of the post road. I mean, it is what it is, and it will always be that way. We hope.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's sort of our, you know, the way
Yeah.
I read it anyway. So we're really talking about a, you know, a small part of the town.
And you also talk in your RFP about how do you address housing affordability. And I think that in some ways, you know, you have some great senior housing out there now. Maybe you do need more in the town. Or maybe it's like, where do, you know, children go that want to stay here after they graduate college, but they don't want to move back in with mom and dad? Is there available housing for that group? You know, it's like, they a lot of times call it the missing middle, right? It's not where it's, you know,
Well, we,
subsidized housing, but it has to be more affordable than buying, you know, a nice big colonial on an acre or two, you know, or something,
Even
right?
people like teachers and government workers,
Yeah.
you know.
Opportunity to live in town. So some of that comes out in your housing section of your plan. So that's something
Well,
that. you
hopefully,
talk-
part of the community engagement, because I mentioned it to one of the other presenters, is that our board is a very specific demographic
Oh, yeah.
of, you know, because you need to have, you know, time to do
Yes.
this. And so we might not necessarily know what the people who are children's age or, you know, and if you're reaching out to those people to find out,
Yeah.
you know, it might be news to us that more people in town would like apartments.
Or it may be an alternative form, you know, it may not be an apartment, it may be
Townhouses,
duplexes,
clusters,
townhouses,
whatever.
right, some type of
Yeah.
smaller unit clustering, cottage community, like smaller area, but you know, it's, how do you incorporate that in? You know, where is their availability and how do you transition to that? Because you don't plop it right in the middle of your, you know, acre zoning or
We should
something.
talk to some
you know,
of our
that's what we look
developers.
at. I know.
Well, you know, a lot of the housing, you know, age restricted, affordable, I mean,
No,
it's
we've
sort
been
of
working
found them, you know, not found, but I mean, I know
Yeah.
we had something to do with it, but,
Yeah.
you know, got to the same location, or, you know, generally in the same location.
Well, they need.
It's nicely done, and the other thing that I saw was that there's services for them right there. You know, like, so there's medical that was
plenty of- yeah.
there, you know, it's accessible to the stores and all that are nearby. So I think that that's kind of important, that's well planned, and that's what you want to come out of your POCD. If you find that you need another area, or you have another demographic that would fit into that, and that, it seems like it fits well in that part of town also, because it is somewhat walkable, but it is a short commute to services that they would want to access. So,
I think we're gonna have to deal with in the future as the retail starts settling out as to, you know, what is the long-term projection for retail tenancy on the post road that,
Yeah,
you know, some of the smaller, non-competitive spaces might become, you know, mixed use.
mm-hmm,
You know, because you've got the buses, you've got the parking,
right.
you got a framework of a structuring and.
Yeah, which if they were projects that wound up looking like Firelight, I wouldn't,
Might be okay.
I'd be, you know, I'd feel good about that.
Yeah, we actually were talking about that just yesterday, you know, about like the potential for, we were, you know,
Yeah.
going along Boston Post Road and said, you know, there is the potential for this to become mixed use in the future,
Yeah.
But
you know, but.
you want to
that's what we
know
want
if that's
and the
something the
desire.
community
The
wants.
market, right, absolutely, and
Because
that's
the
what community
your
engagement's
community
about.
out might be, no,
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, it's possible.
And
I would,
that's-
I would,
Certainly is.
I would guess not, but you
I
you
don't
might be
know.
right.
We'll never
yeah.
know
Yeah.
until we
till you get to community
Yeah.
engagement, right?
can sit here and speculate, yeah.
Yeah.
We know.
Absolutely.
All right, any questions?
No, we have some homework to do on references.
Yeah, we definitely do. That was, a great proposal, and
Thank you.
thank you for coming here tonight
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your
very
time.
much.
Thank you.
to,
Nice
you know,
meeting you.
flesh it all out with us.
Yeah, thanks for staying until 9 to
We've had
stay
them
with
go
us.
later, I'm sure you guys know.
You pushed the envelope tonight.
Yeah,
No sporting events.
I can go straight to bed now.
Yeah, no community outreach after 9:30.
All right, well, thanks again.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much,
And
it
have
was
a
very
good-
nice meeting
Have a
you.
good ride home.
Absolutely.
All right. All right, so that concludes our agenda for this evening. Somebody prepared to move that we close the meeting?
So moved.
We have a-
Second.
It's been seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting's adjourned at 9:25.
Nice.